The system itself is biased. You have to change the system. The DNA of law enforcement, the DNA of the criminal justice system itself is biased and racist. But guess what? Just because they're my kinfolk, they're my skinfolk, don't mean they're my kinfolk. My name is Damon K. Jones. I am the New York representative of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America. I've been working at the Westchester County Department of Corrections for 30 years. I am also the co-founder and owner of Black Westchester Magazine.
My name is Levi Andrew Holmes II, retired lieutenant from the Newark Police Department. I served 25 years, retired this past March 1st.
My name is Rochelle Bilal, retired Philadelphia police officer, 27 years, been retired since 2013.
My name is Crystal Williams Coleman. I am retired from the Philadelphia Police Department as a homicide detective. Worked in the Philadelphia Police Department for 32 years.
My name is Charles Wilson. I'm the National Chair for the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers. I'm a retired lieutenant. I served 45 years. Retired finally in 2016.
Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. I am currently a case manager supervisor with the Urban League of Westchester. That is what I do during the day, but I'm also a police reform activist. I say hero to some, troublemaker to others. All depends on which side of the fence you're standing on. I am one of the co-founders of the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform, which was founded in 2012 after the killing of my father, Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. I like to say I've always been the type of person to give back and want to help any community that I live in. I feel that that's important. But I was kind of thrust to the forefront on November 19, 2011. My father inadvertently triggered his Life Aid pendant that he wore around his neck. He suffered from a heart condition and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I guess at that point, by him triggering that, they contacted White Plains Police. They responded to my father's apartment. They demanded that he open the door. He said he was fine, didn't need any help. Long story short, they eventually took the door off its hinges. They fired an electronic taser at him, beanbag shotgun 4 times, and then they shot him and killed him, alleging that he was the threat, that he posed an imminent threat to life and well-being. Even during that whole altercation, they were overheard on the audio calling my father a nigger and using expletives as well.
We have to remember, law enforcement was created to oppress black people. Let's not forget that. The DNA in policing the black community is racism and oppression. So once we understand that, I think we can move forward in how do we work through this system. But we still have an illusion of inclusion when we put that badge on that we're one of them, but we're not.
When there was an incident in the neighborhood, they used to call them blue cops in my neighborhood. They would come through, they call highway officers now, would come through and just beat up black men. Beat them up and leave them there. And that formed my opinion of police officers from a child. That that's all they would do is come in our neighborhood and just terrorize.
What really shaped my mentality or my sentiments toward the police officers negatively was I was a member of a youth organization in college. I attended Rutgers University, and we had a rented van. We were going on a trip on the New Jersey Turnpike. I'll never forget it. The police officers pulled us over for being in the left lane too long, and it was the most traumatic experience I ever had in my life. I actually had an emotional breakdown. I was crying. I went through a tantrum because at that point I felt totally hopeless. I had no option, no sense of retaliation. And I felt as though the police had all the authority, all the power. They were all there with their guns on college students, all for being in the left lane too long. He had his license, we had all the paperwork we had. We were required, we had it. So that was a horrible experience for me, and I carried that with me every day.
Most of the interactions I had with police as I was growing up weren't that bad. I mean, I grew up in the inner city Cleveland, And the majority of the cops that I came in contact with looked like me. The beat cop in my neighborhood was actually dating one of my aunts, you know. So it was a situation of we learned that there were cops who had the back of the community, and there were also cops who tried to put down the community, okay? And luckily enough for me, I met more of the former than I did the latter.
I have a lot of family members that are in law enforcement. My uncle was the first black captain for New York State Corrections, and I have a lot of family members in the South that are sheriffs. Coming up as a kid, I didn't see law enforcement as the enemy as we see it now. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but when I was coming up, we had white cops that were our dad's club football coaches and baseball coaches. So I didn't see that as a youth.
I can say that I can remember as a very young child, I remember trying to cross the street and the traffic was going up and down very heavy and I couldn't get across. And I remember a police officer pulling up in his car, putting on his lights and stopping traffic on both sides and telling me to cross. And that was a very positive memory that I had of law enforcement. But once I hit my teens and, you know, everything just changed. You're walking down the street, I'm minding my business, I'm being stopped, saying I fit the description of someone who may have robbed somebody. They want to know where I'm going, where I'm coming from. I mean, your typical harassment. I always say I don't know a black person who has not had a negative interaction with law enforcement.
The system itself is biased. You have to change the system. The DNA of law enforcement, the DNA of the criminal justice system itself is biased and racist, and we still don't want to accept that. You know, sometimes they might put a black commissioner or a black chief, you know, but guess what? Just because they're my kinfolk, you know, they're my skinfolk, don't mean they're my kinfolk. So they'll get in and they'll go along with it and they don't change policies, right? So what's the point of having a black person as a commissioner, a black person over policies and procedures and training, and they don't change it, you know, for accountability and transparency? So what's the point? Because the system is set up to oppress. But until the people understand that, until the people want better from their politicians, and until the people pressure their politicians, it will still be the same, and we'll still see black men and women abused by this system.
And so this institution is inherently biased, but is incumbent upon those of us, black and brown people, to change this institution, to ensure that it treats people fairly. That's what our job is. And if we as African Americans, Hispanic, Asian people get on this job, and we don't make a difference in changing that biasness in this institution, then we need to find something else to do.
And that's organizations like the ones we're involved in, like that is what we're about.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to say too is that there's an implicit bias in the United States
Yeah.
when it comes to African Americans.
Yes.
So now, if you're talking about the bias that exists throughout the country towards us, then the police are no different. When you go to the police academy, they train you how to make arrests, what the laws are, and things of that nature. There is no washing machine to change you into a better person.
Yeah.
So if you were a racist before you became a police officer, you are a racist with authority. Whatever you were, whatever your issue was, is that same person. So the racism that exists when you want to get a bank loan, right, or things of this nature, when we go to the local department store and security follows us around, all this still exists. The police are no different.
The system is implicitly biased. I mean, we have been dealing with that forever. I mean, yes, I mean, from the very beginning, this is what you're taught. This is how you were supposed to see things. I mean, you can even go far, and some people even make the analogy about when you're doing the target practice, that the silhouettes are black. I can remember someone shared something with me, and they said that they asked these police officers, these new recruits in the academy, there's a fire, you're the first person to arrive on the scene. They tell you that there is a mother and a child in the house trapped. Who did you save first? And a white police officer recruit said, what color are they? So you tell me.